Welcome back everybody, and welcome to this channel, the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. I am showing you the white brand model 568, which was a fairly costly machine in its day. It was one of many models that you could buy if you went into a white sewing machine dealer, and you could get everything from a straight stitch machine all the way where you would see something like this dial here. You'd have your feed dog drop, your reverse button, and that was basically it, and nothing wrong with that. A lot of people were buying them. If you were willing to spend more money, you could keep going. You could get a ZigZag model, or in this case, you could get a model that takes decorative stitch cams. And I have been working on this machine, getting it to wake up, and the last time I was showing this to you, I was using a product called La Tromba is the brand. It's valve oil. It's sold in a music store. I was in a music store with a friend, and I saw this, and I'm like, what is that? It's extremely thin. It is an oil. It's a machine oil, but it has some level of solvent in it. And I like to experiment with different things depending on the condition of a machine. So I put that in, and I actually gave it 2 or 3 days to just sit there. And the result is, of course, I did have, I had the straight stitch, you know, the motion. You can see the needle bar moving up and down, and that was okay when I got this. But of course, as is very common, you may have discovered this if you've ever had a vintage sewing machine that used zigzag, that the zigzag width is actually established here with a lever. It's spring-loaded. 0 would put you at straight stitch, and then as you come across over to 5, you would get the widest zigzag. And it is spring-loaded, and of course, getting the mechanism above to loosen. I'm going to give you guys more of a bird's eye view here and let you see the actual part of the machine that creates or allows the zigzag movement. Remember that the mechanism in your machine has to do something to move your needle bar in a sideways motion, right? Thus, you don't get zigzag without that. So we'll take a look at some of the areas I have been, where I had put the valve oil. And when you look at them, again, if you don't have, let's say you don't have the manual, but even if you do, the manual may only give you a few areas to oil. For example, when this machine was made in the early 60s, this is the lid to the machine body, it still had holes. You didn't have to take the lid off to oil it. It was very user-friendly. You would just, you know, add drops of oil where you saw the holes. And that would take care of the oiling, at least for the upper portion of the machine. But that's not going to be enough. If you have one of these and the machine is sleepy, well, that's my way of saying the machine is stiff or it doesn't want to move, you have to get the top off, because what you're essentially doing is going in and looking for anything that moves. And where you see metal moving, I'm just turning this, I'm turning the hand wheel with my hand here outside the camera, but you can see. Now, notice this piece, right? So this piece is actually moving, but it's not the zigzag, okay? Now watch what happens. I'm going to come underneath that lever I was showing you before that is spring-loaded, and as I move it all the way over to a wide zigzag, watch. You see this piece? It is sliding. Now, people have asked before, why did they have a spring-loaded zigzag? One of the reasons was we can set the zigzag where we want it, and that mechanism is on the front. These little rolling tumblers here, they're nice and textured. They're little rolling, I call them rolling barrel screws, for lack of a better term. But when you set them, we can lock the zigzag in. But I wanted to make sure that this was moving. So I'm now ready to go back, because I feel like I'm getting enough movement here. It's time. I did not need to use heat in this case. So what am I doing? I'm putting a few drops here, over here, and notice any piece that is moving, right? When you see metal slide against metal, or pivoting, you want to put a drop or two. Now, if your machine is dry like this one was, you put more. Normally, if the machine is in great shape, you're using it, it's been overhauled, it's humming along, then you only need to add one drop, and one drop only, through the holes in the lid that I just showed you. But again, a restorer's technique, when you want to wake a machine up after decades of not being used, it's going to take more. It could take heat. In my case, it took that. I used the valve oil. Valve oil is going to have an effect not unlike a penetrant oil. The 3-in-1s, some of you have used a brand called Croyle, which I do not have here, but I also have Liquid Wrench. There are different ones, right? But I used the valve oil. It didn't have quite the nasty smell that some of those penetrants do, and it worked in a similar way. It's an oil, but it was very thin, and it had a solvent in it. So another thing you can do is you can look. There is actually a hole which normally you would access. You would normally oil your machine and never really have to take the lid off, because on this particular model, now we know eventually, you know what happens. They get rid of the holes in the lid, and they make it hard to take the lid off because they don't want you to maintain your own machine. And that happens once we get into the 70s and 80s. It becomes, you can do it, but they're trying to push you into the dealership. And okay, but at least it can be maintained. So notice here, you see that little hole right there? That hole sits right beneath the hole in the lid. So normally, you don't have to remove the lid. All you have to do is add one drop when you're keeping your machine oiled. But I want the lid off because I need to get access to the machine more directly, because I need to wake it up. So I've got my oiler here, and just put 1 or 2 drops there. And that oil, by the way, that hole is right above the drive shaft, right? And it really could use some lubrication there, because the drive shaft is surrounded by a giant bushing, and think of the bushing as like a collar that the drive shaft spins in. Something has to support its spin. If you don't have a bearing, you usually have a bushing. A bushing is, I believe, the correct term here. So we're going to come up, and you can see down below, there will be, I'll actually get us a flashlight for this, because make sure that you can see what I'm referring to. Okay, when I bring this up, you will see, right, there's an opening here. You can put a drop. You can even go in and add. Remember, this shaft is rotating against this, right? So this piece here is spinning inside of this piece. And so you want to definitely put oil on both sides. Again, if you are trying to, there's a little cam right in there. I'm going to put some oil, and now that cam is much happier, right? It had it had some residual oil, but these machines were designed. Oh, I missed the cam. I need to come over here. I went too far. I went on the outer part of the cam. Okay, no, the machine just responded beautifully. Oh, it's so happy. Now it can move a little bit better. All right, now notice something. When you're adding oil, there will be times when it's kind of obvious. You can see things that move, right? So when I take the spring-loaded zigzag movement, you can see these pieces move, and you say, okay, right? And I need you look where things are moving against each other, and you oil them. But sometimes they are hiding. So for example, this piece, this lever, controls needle position. Right now it is centered, which is where most people used it. And it was stiff because it uses a different mechanism than the zigzag does. Okay, it has mechanisms below. So what did I do? I oil right here, right? But there's a place you might not see, because this piece here is black steel, and so is the piece attached to the lever. Now watch what happens when I move it. Did you see it come out? You want to make sure you get oil there, right? It's not, some of these things you have to kind of look at. If you don't pay close attention, you'll miss them, right? Now, the only holes you don't oil are holes with threads. Holes, let's try that again. Holes with threads, like this one and this one up here. These are the holes for the actual lid, okay? So you can put a drop on the bolts that hold the lid on, but you don't oil the lid bolts. It's not really useful. There's another one here. And again, when we're doing this, you want to get as many of these as you possibly can. And you think, well, what if I miss one? If you do, hopefully you will become more aware of your machine over time, and then you can get it next time. Okay? Get as much as you possibly can. Sometimes you will see an open hole, which is, you know, some of the machines from Europe, they would often mark these with bright paint, like red or something. This one is not, but I know that when I put that drop of oil there, right? So now there's a shaft, a little mini shaft that's spinning with these two parts, and then I can even go ahead and add a drop of oil there. And that is going to help this piece move so much better, right? And then below it, right down here, we have another, right? So I'm going to hit the hole there, and I'm going to go ahead and hit that side, and I actually come around, see if I can shift the camera for you, and you will see, I believe, you see this spinning piece here. So I'm going to go ahead and put oil right there because I know I want oil in that spot. Now, once you have done this, you will see, of course, and I've shown this before, get my pointer here, you may have seen, we'll come back and let's put the camera back for you folks, because this is something, some of these machines, they start building these brackets and it's not always easy to see, but right there, I'm going to move this once again. I really want to make sure that you all are getting an actual good view of what I'm talking about. In fact, I think I'm going to, yeah, let's zoom in here. So notice, and when the needle bar comes up, you're going to see right here, it's not very wide. I mean, we're talking less than 1/4 of an inch. And that is a shaft that the needle bar is going to move in a sideways motion. So that is a very important part right there. Okay, make sure you oil that. I actually put the valve oil on it when I was getting the machine first loosened. And then of course we've got the upper part of our needle bar. You can oil here. You can come down below and you can actually, I say you can, right here, if you look downwards, you may be able to see, get our angle here just right. Obviously the needle bar is going straight down and it's going to hit a collar down below. Let's see if I can get that to show. It's a very odd spot, okay? Not sure if that's going to show, but when you see your needle bar here, simply follow it all the way down, okay? And you're going to come up on, it's so interesting what the human eye can see but a camera can't always really pick up on very well. So I'm going to come over a little bit more here. All right, maybe you can see me following with my brass oiling spout here. I'm following it all. Oh, right now you're not seeing anything. All right, let's see if we can get this to be still so you don't get seasick on me. All right, okay, so this is the upper portion of your needle bar, and I'm going to see if I can actually tilt. This is kind of an odd thing to show, very strange thing to show, but okay. Maybe you can see the reflection of the bar as it goes away from you. I'm going to take my oiler all the way down and I'll hit another part of the shaft. Maybe we'll zoom in again. I'll try to hold it still. I'm holding basically a bowling ball in one spot here. All right, so what I want you to notice is there's a bracket or bushing that the needle bar is going through. Below there, the needle bar keeps obviously going down. Follow that down until you reach another, basically another bushing. It's not my thumb that you need to see. All right, I'm going to follow this all the way down, and I'm going to get to the next bushing, and I'm going to put a few drops of oil there. And what I'm trying to do is basically coat the needle bar. Okay, so let's get things back down to this level here and let you all actually see something. One thing you'll see is this nice blob of sewing oil, which I have managed to drop. That's okay, we're not going to hurt the machine. Again, you normally would never oil a sewing machine this much for normal oiling maintenance. You end up with a mess, and I've told all of you that many times. But again, we are in a process of restoring, waking up the machine. And so again, another way you can get to your needle bar, I know it was very hard to see what I was trying to show you there, then you can do it here, but make sure you pull the needle bar up. So now you've got your needle bar nice and coated with oil, and I've even added a drop or two right here. This of course is my presser bar pressure, right? There's a big spring underneath this, and so if I can always let it go, and then I can start over and put a little, medium, or a lot of pressure on the bar. And that's basically that. And then over here, look, if you notice, this is easier to show than on some machines. You have these little clips, and they are spring-like. They flex, right? And so when you're closing the machine, actually, I believe, oh, I see what this, yeah. This particular one is not to hold the door on. This is actually going to push against this. This, of course, is your light switch, right? Once for on, once for off. And so when you push on this lovely chrome piece, you know, it's engaging, right? So what am I going to do with this? Basically, you don't have to oil that. What you can do is, okay, so on this piece here, when you push on the button that turns the light on and off, it pushes against this, I don't know if it's a sort of a flange, it's tension, right? It's a piece of steel that's bent, and it pushes in against this switch on for the light off, once again for turning the light off. And then you want to take a very, very small amount of grease, and I mean tiny amount, because we're going to put some right there on the end of this clip. And as it comes around, it's going to hit here, right there. And it would hit there anyway, but now it's smooth. It's definitely going to hold your door. Don't worry, your door's not going to get slippery. But you know, this is how it was. I've seen old grease on these from the factory. That's how they were designed. Now, when I say a little bit, remember, you only need a film. So if you put the grease on and it looks like you got a little excess, just take it off. No big deal. You haven't heard anything, but it'll just be less mess for you. All right, so what do we have left here, folks? We have not oiled the underbelly, the underside of this machine. So in the next video, I will take us underneath, and we will take a look at what needs to be lubricated below the machine. And at that point, hopefully we should have most everything lubricated. And you'll notice this mechanism, this big dial, is designed to lower the feed dogs. And like almost every machine I've ever worked on, it doesn't work. It's not broken. It is usually frozen shut because people never used it. It left the factory ready to go and no one bothered to use it. So, like if I push, it says push to push for base. I have to read that with the bright light off. Anyway, you're going to push it in and then you're going to turn it. Now, when I do that, it's very stiff. It doesn't want to turn. And yours is probably, very likely, going to be the same. And if that happens to you, just stop. Listen to your machine. Your machine is talking to you, and it's very important to listen. Do not force it to do something it doesn't want to do. Now we also have our reverse button, right? And we have, again, you've got actually a piece or a section right up here. And we're going to make sure that we know where that is. Because again, it is yet another of the moving parts that you want to lubricate. Again, normally, you should not have to figure out your machine if it has all those oiling points in the lid as I showed you. Well, of course it does. And that should be enough. So, below here, I've got my thumb on the reverse button. When I push it, you should see something moving. You should see this moving right here. And that's how you know where to put your oil, because you're going to have parts wanting to move against each other, because that's what they were designed to do, right? And by the way, you have another, let's give you guys another perspective here so you can see the area I'm speaking of. So right here, got my thumb again on the watch. Do you see this piece moving? I'm pushing on the reverse button. So we've got metal to metal on both sides, and that's what I'm pushing. So now the reverse was working, but it's thirsty. It's been waiting for some oil. But there's another area that you want to lubricate. So if I want to lubricate my stitch length adjusting dial, there is a shaft, and it pushes. I'm going to turn the dial and watch what happens. That shaft moves inward, and it causes yet another mechanism to shift. And this right now with this all the way in, I have my longest stitch length. Okay, so what do? Once you have that, set it on, I believe it's 7. Put a drop or 2 on the shaft. Now watch as I turn it back. Well, let's try it. Now try it. I have it all the way extended inside the machine. Now I'm going to turn the dial back, and now I have just coated this shaft with a long overdue quenching thirst for oil. Okay, because the dial is happy to move, but it needs to be able to move the shaft. And the moving parts here that you see moving, we'll just put a few drops of oil there. All right. Now there's one area left that we haven't covered. And it's easily missed. Many of you might miss this. It might be mentioned in your use and care manual, but I never like to make that assumption, because with every few years, sewing manufacturers would change the maintenance direction in the manuals. So let's take a look and see if any of you know what I'm referring to. So underneath this piece, when I'm turning the hand wheel, and you see this piece pivoting back and forth, when it pivots away, look what we see. We have a gear, a very nice high quality gear, and it needs grease. Not a lot, but it needs some. So I'm going to take my grease, a little grease syringe here. And I'm just going to put some. Now, you saw me using a cotton swab when I was putting grease on the little clip on the door. For down here, I'm not going to do the cotton swab because I don't want cotton fibers on my gear. That doesn't help. So I'm going to take this. You can just take something you can grab onto, and then I'm going to put this, just smear it along the teeth of this gear. Now you can only get about, I don't know, from 6 o'clock to 2 o'clock there, but no big deal. We'll just sit in here and turn it, right? And so now I can go ahead and get a little bit more area covered in grease. And if you think, well, I'm missing some teeth, eventually these teeth come in contact with another gear that you cannot see. Or you can barely see it at all because it's actually a worm gear. The drive shaft, right? Let's turn the hand wheel again. You will see the drive shaft here is turning. Let me zoom back out here. Zoom back some more. Okay. So the drive shaft, you can see where I've got my metal tool here. The drive shaft is spinning, okay? underneath here, you can't see this very well, they have a worm gear, okay? And that gear is what works with the bronze colored gear that I just lubricated. So as the machine spins, it spreads the grease between the bronze gear and the worm gear, okay? So if I come around, you might, maybe, I'm not even sure that it will show. Let me see if I can get that out of here. No, that didn't help at all. So it's a very odd thing to show. And if you have the machine in front of you, you will see it. The camera is not always kind to trying to show things. Let's see if that will help. I doubt it. But anyway, I promise you there is a worm gear, and it is basically right there. Okay? It doesn't look like much from this angle, but if you were seeing it from the angle that I can, the camera will not fit in, you will see that there's a worm gear there that's coming in contact, again, with this bronze gear. Okay, there is one more spot. And that spot is underneath here. You cannot see it. In fact, it would be very easy to miss. But right here, not here, but right below, there are gear teeth right in there. So you want to do the same thing. Again, don't flood your machine with grease. Gears can only hold so much grease at one time, right? They're limited to that, and that's fine because it's not like they burn through grease constantly. They don't. It's really not an issue. So you can simply, again, I would avoid the cotton swab in these situations. Take your grease and you can just put it on the teeth that you're able to get to, yeah. And then as I turn the hand wheel, this motion may or may not be visible to you, but this gear underneath where your cam would go is turning. Okay, so just keep letting that grease get on the gear, okay, and eventually you should be fine. You will have enough grease to cover you. Again, less is more, which you often hear me say, but again, with grease, once you've covered the teeth of the gear, you don't have to flood the gear because it's just going to squish the grease out. You're wasting grease and potentially making a big fat mess. So that's the good news when it comes to that. So we have, believe it or not, we have essentially lubricated all of the upper parts of the machine. And in earlier videos when I was talking about the clutch mechanism that is unique to certain white brand series of models, of which this is one, I went ahead and lubricated that. I actually, knowing that there was plenty of oil still in there, you don't necessarily have to disassemble this, and I've talked about that, why you have to loosen things to get your belt on, but you don't have to take the entire assembly apart just to clean and oil it. You can, now that you know how, because I was able to get a video of that. But normally that oil doesn't, usually it's not a problem. But that's a choice. I just needed to do that. I wanted to see every part of this machine to make sure that everything had been lubricated. So there you go. That is the entire the needle bar and pressure bar side. And by the way, of course, you will want to oil the pressure bar. I've shown that before. It's quite easy. All you do is, and that is with sewing machine oil. And what you will essentially do is, when the bar is down, your pressure bar doesn't travel nearly as far as your needle bar does. So you don't have as much bar to make sure you've got covered, right? So I'll put right up here, and then as soon as I get that oil on, I'm going to start pulling my pressure bar up, right? And then there's just a very narrow band up here that you can get on the side, and that should take care of your pressure bar. Yes, you should lubricate it. Again, the things on a machine that you want to lubricate often are the parts that are really moving when you're sewing, okay? So I don't think you're going to have to re-oil your presser bar nearly as often as you do your needle bar. Okay, so when you do once every 3 months, depends on how often you use your machine, but when your machine is ready to be oiled, you definitely want to hit a lot of the points I've shown. Now, going forward, when this machine has a new owner, they will need to oil it, but they can oil it from above without having to remove the lid. So again, as I've mentioned many times, routine maintenance oiling is not the same as when you are trying to wake a machine up and you just can't get it to play ball. And once the machine is up and running and you're using it regularly, just oil it based on what the manual is showing you, and you should be just fine. And that is the upper oiling. And just for good measure, I will show you. Remember this big black gear that I was putting grease on? I'll actually be able to show you what it is participating with. Because if you look, you will see another bronze gear. Is it any wonder why these machines were so expensive? And this gear, right, it turns against the gear underneath the cam. And that is what drives decorative stitches. Again, this machine did not come with its cams. The cams were, they were separated at one point, and that's very common. See a little place here I want to get. But you can look online for cams that will fit the machine, and if you find them, you can use them. I don't know how many of you use decorative cams in a vintage machine that you have. If you do, put your comments down below there, because honestly, it's been my experience that a lot of sewers who bought decorative cams might have used them once or twice, and they just did straight and zigzag sewing. Maybe you're different, right? Maybe you use a modern computerized machine to do all sorts of lovely fancy stitches, or maybe you do use decorative stitches with cams or built-in cams in your vintage machine. If you do, I would love to know. I don't like making those assumptions without hearing from those of you who do lots of sewing. All right, that is like the third time I've attempted to end this video, but at 32 minutes and a half, we will proceed. In the next video, we'll talk about going underneath the machine, and hopefully we will have a machine that is almost ready to be tested, but we have a few other things to do before we get there. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in part 2.